What's the difference between a Souls-like and, I don't know, literally anything else on the planet? We'll find out. Gamer Braves. What's up guys, this is Juan and Real from Gamer Braves, and we're gonna do a little educational thing today. We're gonna be talking about Souls-likes. It's not every day that you really invent a new genre of game. A lot of people like to claim they did, like one Hideo Kojima with his Strand type game Death Stranding. The truth is, the existence of a genre is in a lot of ways the same way you classify a new family of dinosaurs. Unlike dinosaurs, a new family of games actually requires more than one entry in it. Otherwise, it just kind of becomes a weird oddity. Kind of like how Genshin used to be a Breath of the Wild clone with gacha elements, but now, after everyone tried to make their own Genshin killer, you now have the Genshin-like as its own genre. Now, there's a lot of questions about what exactly a Souls-like is, and I think we need to get into, first of all, the difference between a Souls-like and a Soulsborne. It's not rocket science. A Soulsborne is strictly a From Software game. This includes Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. I've seen people try to argue that they should expand the name to Soulsborne Nekiro, but no. I disagree. It works at Soulsborne. Stop trying to give that game a participation trophy. Meanwhile, anything that is not developed by From Software would fall into the Souls-like category. These are because these are games, more often than not, inspired by Dark Souls, or at least trying to accomplish the same goals that those games are. One of the best makers of Souls-like games is Koei Tecmo. They've been doing an excellent job with the Nioh series, and then expanded that into Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin, and most recently Wo Long. From the success of this, you can tell what makes a good Souls-like. So, the most superficial way you can make a good Souls-like is the roll. And you definitely see it in a lot of even non-Souls-like games. They try to add some sort of dodge roll. It's part of why I do not like LX2, is because that game's combat does not need a roll, but it has it, just so that it could pretend to be a Souls-like for a bit. The thing about the Souls roll is that it is very, very safe. Despite the fact that these games are marketed as the hardest things to ever exist, the Souls roll is actually fairly forgiving. Especially when you compare it to games like Monster Hunter, where those roll timings can be strict, unless you get the necessary skills to cover you. The reason why the roll is such a big giveaway of the Souls-like genre is because it leads into the game's design. If you have a good roll, you're gonna need gameplay that supports it. And that usually means having some sort of big enemy with big, slow swings, which is what most of these games have. Heck, From Software literally cannot help themselves. The Asylum Demon keeps showing up, even in Elden Ring as the Erdtree avatar. The other really important mechanic for your Souls-like is the corpse run. A lot of games die and have you restart, but the idea of a good corpse run is that it needs to make it as efficient as possible. No going back to the main menu, having to load back in. It's you get sent back, and depending on the power of your console, it has to be nearly instantaneous. Bonus points if the characters actually react to being sent back. Despite the fact that you're not playing some sort of immortal undead in Stranger of Paradise, Jack will actually comment when you come back saying, okay, let's try this again or something like that. The corpse run is a very big deal in the Souls-like genre because it's about teaching you. The idea is that the game isn't over because you die. It's simply the game's feedback telling you, well, what you were doing wasn't working, so maybe you should try something else. And I think that's the trickiest thing because it gets very philosophical about it, because I think in a Souls game like Elden Ring or Bloodborne or Dark Souls, like there's a reason dying works the way it does in those games. It's you die, you get a loading screen, you immediately start back at the last checkpoint. There's no menu that says load from last checkpoint or go to main menu. You want to go to the main menu, you open that up and you quit. You tell the game, I'm done for today. Where you compare that to a game like Doom Eternal, where when you die, you will get a menu asking if you want to load back from the last checkpoint or call it a day. It's not necessarily about the actual content of the game, it's how the game chooses to present it to you. The last really important feature about making your Souls-like is that it should be always gameplay first. It's not that Souls-likes aren't allowed to have a story, it's just that quality is just as much an indicator of a Souls-like as any of its mechanics, because the quality directly affects the mechanics. Like I said, having a really good roll means that you can have more boss fights that require you to roll. I think Stranger of Paradise is a really interesting example of a game that actually has a good story. We all joke about Jack, the crazy chaos man, but that game actually has a really good story. However, that's not the best part of the game. The best part of the game is the combat, where you have to parry things in order to have more meter to do your skills. It's kind of ridiculous. The way I like to see it is Dark Souls is very much the Street Fighter of the Souls-like genre. It cemented a lot of the fundamental ideas, and now the rest of the Souls-like genre is what can we take apart from this, what can we remove, what can we experiment to make it all more fun. That's why at the start of this I highlighted that Koei Tecmo is very good at doing that, because Neo went and took the parry from Dark Souls, which is honestly just kind of an optional thing that you could do in the Souls games, and went, no, what if we made this a core mechanic? And now you have their own branch of games, which are all very parry reliant. And it's really funny because then you get into Sekiro, which is also very parry reliant. It's a good example about how genres grow even if they're competing against each other. It should be noted that even though games like God of War was originally praised as being a sort of Souls-like because of the camera, presentation is the least important part of making your Souls-like. I really enjoy games like Dev's Gambit, which is a side-scroller, but very much wants to be a Souls game.
How many times have you died trying to reach me? Is all your pain worth it?
The thing with all genres is there are always muddy exceptions. Like I said, before games become their own genres, they will also just be weird in-betweeners. One game I consider in this list is Hyper Light Drifter, because if you know anything about anything, you know that the Souls genre itself is actually an offshoot of the Zelda-like. The original Demon Souls shares a lot of similarities with old school Zelda games. And when you look at it, Hyper Light Drifter might give off the imagery of a Souls-like, since, you know, it's about a dying world and you do load fairly fast in that game and you dodge a lot of stuff. However, Hyper Light Drifter is something I would definitely push more into the Zelda-like category. You definitely see it in the UI, it's going for that Zelda look. And it brings us to the most important point about any kind of genre discussion, which is genres are very important, but genres do not matter. Indeed, you're gonna have this discussion a lot when you talk about things like Souls-like, what is an action game, what is an adventure game, is that ultimately all a genre is helping you set your expectations for what you're gonna get in that game. If you tell me something is a Souls-like, I am going to expect a good dodge, some sort of parry mechanic, and fast loading every time you die. Here's a slightly more controversial thing that I think works in a Souls-like, is that the Souls-like has to be consistent. Souls-likes are in the same vein as roguelikes, where a lot of games are trying to claim that they are one now. In fact, you may see some games even call themselves Souls-inspired roguelikes or whatever, and those cannot exist next to each other. When you play a Souls-like, everything is exactly the same as it was. When you go in, there will be a skeleton to your left, a dog to your right, and a boulder about to hit you every single time. The only thing that roguelikes and Souls-likes have in common is the corpse run. But the way that a roguelike does it is, well, we'll give you a new challenge every time you die. Souls games are about pushing you to finish that challenge. They are there, sitting behind you, telling you to finish your homework so you can go parry Gwyn. Part of the reason why the definitions for genres get so muddy is because of marketing. Just like, you know, you may want to put keywords in a YouTube video to make it do well, people have realized that calling your game a specific type of genre might attract more attention to it. it's the reason why the whole Dark Souls of X meme exists. Because at the time, people were really looking at Dark Souls.
Oh my god, you guys, this is exactly like that one part in Dark Souls.
A lot of people think things like the Gothic architecture is necessary for a Souls-like, but I don't think so. I think we just haven't seen a game that's going to have really good Souls-like gameplay and then chopping in some totally out there aesthetic. Hey, I want to see an 80s anime style Souls-like. If you're working on one, send it to me because I will check that out. What's your favorite Souls-like? Personally, I'm very much looking forward to Lies of P, which comes out later this year. But basically, slap a Souls-like title on anything and I will go check it out. This has been Watermelon from Game Braves. Take care, guys. Hey there! Thank you so much for watching our videos. Don't forget to give us a subscribe if you'd like to see more, and like so we know what kind of content you want to see. Got suggestions for new content? Let us know in the comments below too. Thank you so much again for watching. Take care, dudes.